sugar and alcohol, I don't think people commonly would put the two things together. People, I think, like, Joe Public, I think would think, okay, alcohol, I know if I drink too much, it's not good for me. It's going to cause problems with my liver. I think there's that understanding. And if I drink a little bit, have some days off a week, the odd glass of wine here and there is probably not going to be too bad for me, I think is what most people tend to think.
That's true. And if that were the case, that would be true. And that's true for about the 40% of Americans who are social drinkers. 40% of teetotalers don't touch this stuff. Okay. 40% of social drinkers can pick up a beer, put it down like me. Okay. But 10% are binge drinkers and 10% are hardcore alcoholics.
Yeah. But I don't think people think of sugar in the same way in terms of what it does for the liver. And I think that's a really, I think, eye-opening comparison for a lot of people. The other thing you said, which I think really beautifully ties into the start of this conversation, is that you started running an insulin reduction clinic.
Right.
And, like you, I'm very passionate in root causes and this idea that we've labeled all these so-called separate diseases. We get taught about them at medical school as though they're all separate entities. For this disease, you take this drug and you have this sort of treatment. And we look at that downstream pathology, don't we? But you mentioned mitochondria at the start in terms of what sugar or excess sugar can do to mitochondria. And that, mitochondrial dysfunction sits at the heart of so many different conditions, but also insulin resistance, right? So that insulin resistance, that insulin lowering clinic actually would probably, depending on who was coming in, and I appreciate you're a pediatrician, but if all of us as doctors ran insulin reduction clinics,
we would get rid of 75% of the chronic disease in America, in the world.
Exactly. It's that root cause again, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree, which is what I'm trying to, bring to, medicine. Unfortunately, medicine is provincial. Medicine doesn't, respond very well to, new ideas.
Yeah.
It's a cartel, if you will.
You're very critical of modern medicine in the book. You say modern medicine treats symptoms. You say modern medicine is not the solution. I do indeed, and I agree with this. It's something it's one of my big frustrations in my 21 year career seeing patients. It's like, I sometimes wonder if doctors honestly ask themselves sometimes at the end of their day, and obviously it depends where you work. I'm not talking about intensive care. I'm talking about, chronic patients that. And I did this once, Rob. I did this in general practice once. I asked myself at the end of the day, how many patients do you honestly think you've really helped today? And, quite a few years ago, it was 20%. I thought, I've only helped 20% of people. The other 80%, I've done something. I've sent them off for a test. I've, referred them, or I've given them a drug. But I kind of knew they'd be back. I thought, I'm not really getting to the heart of this problem. I knew it, and I kind of feel the patient knew it as well. And that's kind of one of the things that led me on this journey to try and understand that there must be a different way. And, that's why I think Metabolical is such a wonderful book. It outlines the history, it outlines the science, but it also gives some really practical solutions. And, I love we mentioned the liver a lot so far. So one of your big messages in the book is protect the liver and feed the gut,
right,
in terms of dietary advice for people. And, a lot's been written about food in the past, but that's very fresh, I think. That's quite a new idea for people. And I wonder if you could explain then, what do you mean protect the liver and feed the gut?
Sure. Well, before we go into protect the liver, feed the gut, because that'll take up the whole rest of our podcast, is explaining all that. I want to just address the whole medical school thing, and how you felt as a doctor. Me too. The bottom line is, we treat medicine, and unfortunately, medical schools treat medicine like a big game of Clue. Colonel Mustard in the conservatory with the candlestick. Match the symptom card with the diagnosis card with the treatment card and discharge your patient. In fact, in 1980, there was a game that we used to play in residency, on like Sunday mornings before things got busy in the ER, called Intern. And that was what you did. You basically took your symptom, you got a symptom card, you got a diagnosis card, and you got a treatment card. And once you got the three of them together, you got rid of the patient. First, player to discharge all their patients won the game, and that's how we treated it. So, these diseases, got a meningitis, here's an antibiotic, got a cancer, here's a chemotherapy, but the fact is chronic disease doesn't, really fit into that.
Yeah.
There are 8, count them, 8 chronic diseases that have completely taken over modern medicine. 8. And here they are: type 2 diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia, cardiovascular disease, cancer, dementia, fatty liver disease, polycystic ovarian disease. Those 8. Those 8 now account together for 75% of all healthcare costs. And none of them have a cure. None of them even have a treatment. But they all have a prevention. We're not preventing it. We're handing out, statins or, oral hypoglycemics or, antihypertensives, like candy, but that's treating the symptoms, the manifestations of the disease, not actually treating the cause. And the reason is because those diseases are not really the diseases. What's going on underneath to cause all 8 of those diseases are exactly the same. They're just in different organs. And here are the 8 things that I outline in the book, what I call the diseases that are not diseases. I call them the hateful 8. And here they are. Okay. And these are things that people don't know because they don't have ICD-11 codes. And doctors don't know what to do about them, so they don't even mention them. So no one's ever heard of them. And they didn't learn them in medical school either. So here they are, 8. Number 1, glycation. Number 2, oxidative stress. Number 3, mitochondrial dysfunction. Number 4, insulin resistance. Number 5, membrane instability. Number 6, inflammation. Number 7, methylation. Number 8, autophagy. Now, these are all normal phenomena that happen, but they can be speeded up or slowed down by what you eat. And it turns out when you have control over all 8 of those things, you will be 110 playing tennis. And when you don't have control over those 8 things, you will be 40 years old in a wheelchair with 2 stumps on dialysis waiting for your next stroke. And of course, everything in between. So those are the choices. Those are the options. And because none of those 8, the hateful 8 that I just mentioned, none of them have a cure. None of them even have a treatment. They only have a prevention. We're not preventing anything. And that's why you felt like you were not helping any of your patients, because you weren't addressing those 8 root causes that you yourself know to be the big problem in medicine.
Yeah, it's like a leaking roof, isn't it? The roof's leaking, and you just putting a bucket there to pick up the water. That's kind of what the drugs are doing. Yeah, it's great. There's no water there on the floor, so you can live a little bit better, but you're not getting to the cause, right? You need to fix the leak in the roof, and then actually you no longer need the buckets.
Right. Well, and you won't. The problem is if you don't fix the leak in the roof, you won't have a house.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite parts of the book, of these 8 processes that are occurring in all of us, and they're either promoting health and longevity, or they're actually the opposite and creating illness and ultimately disease. And I really love the way you say that actually medicines aren't really tackling those things. And I just want to be really clear for people that antihypertensives or drugs in general, they have a role sometimes, right? They can be helpful in certain situations. I think you're in agreement with that. It's just
I-
we
I'm not,
over.
I'm not against them.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not against them per se. But the problem is that if you don't fix the underlying problem, what have you done? Okay. So it's fine to give a statin to lower an LDL, but what have you done? Have you actually fixed the problem? You haven't done a damn thing about the problem. The problem's still there. Okay. So, the very first sentence of the book, okay, starts like this. You find a wasp in your attic. What do? Kill the wasp or find the wasp's nest? You have to work upstream of a problem to solve a problem. Working downstream of a problem only fixes the result of the problem. The problem's still there. And if you can kill the wasp, but then the next time you go up into the attic, you're going to be stung into submission by all the other wasps.
Yeah.
Because you didn't fix the problem.
I think we really need to, I want to make sure everyone listening and watching this has got this, that what you're talking about is really at the heart of pretty much every single chronic disease that's going on at the moment that is afflicting families, it's overwhelming healthcare systems, it's causing disability, it's causing, reduction in the quality of life. And actually most of them are caused by malfunction in these eight areas. But ultimately, what you're making a very strong case for is that it's actually the modern food environment, this highly ultra-processed food that we are consuming in inordinate quantities, is actually at the root cause. And unless we deal with that as a root cause, we're going to be struggling. People are going to be suffering. Healthcare systems are going to be suffering, and we're not going to get anywhere. Your intro to the book was, it literally was so punchy. Like, we could just do a podcast on the introduction, frankly. But there's a couple of bits I've underlined, which if you don't mind me reading it back to you, your own book.
I so appreciate that you called my intro punchy, because several people on Amazon have said all he did was rant. But I guess it depends on how concerned you are about the problem.
Yeah, and this is such a big problem. Like, it's arguably the biggest problem that's going on across the globe at the moment, because and you see in your kids, right? You see kids. I see kids, and when you see a 7-year-old with pre-diabetes, you're like, this wasn't happening 20, 25 years ago. Something is going on. We can't just give them metformin or what. We have to try and figure out what's causing this.
Right. Kids are the canaries in the coal mine. And if you ignore it, you do it at your own risk. That's just that simple. And that's what we've done. We've ignored it. The other thing is that everybody right now is completely distracted. Okay. They're distracted by this thing called COVID. Okay. And I understand why. And, it's certainly distracting. However, let's talk about that for a minute. Okay. People are dying in droves in every country. UK, US, you name it. Do you know where they're not dying? They're not dying in countries that actually still have real food. Third world countries actually have a very low death rate. And it's not because they're using masks or hand washing, or social distancing. The reason is because they're eating real food. We have the data on mortality rates of the different countries. I can put it up on the screen if you want. But the bottom line is, it's only the developed countries that have the high mortality rates. Now, why is that? So we've identified the elderly, and they have immune dysfunction. We understand that. They can't generate the same cytokine response that you need, that everyone else should be able to. Okay, let's put the elderly aside for a moment, because that's true everywhere. It was true in Italy too. But the other three things, the other three demographics that were shown to be, related to COVID mortality, here they are: people of color, the obese, and pre-existing conditions. Those three: people of color, the obese, pre-existing conditions. What do those three demographics share in common?
Probably poor socioeconomic conditions, poor diet, lots of highly
Poor
processed
diet.
food.
Right. Ultra-processed food consumption. Crappy diet, ultra-processed food consumption. So why should your food make a difference as to whether you die from COVID or not? Why is that?
Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying this video and you want to learn more, then do check out my free special guide, which contains the 6 crucial steps you need to take in your life to not only build healthy habits, but also to make them stick. If you want to get hold of this free guide, all you have to do is click on the link in the description box below.
Here's why. 3 reasons. Number 1, the virus is very smart. It wants to attack all your cells. And every cell in your body has a receptor that helps regulate water within the cell. And that receptor is called ACE2, ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme 2. It's an endocrine receptor. Okay, and that's where angiotensin works, and it involves water transport. All right, so every cell has it. Turns out the virus uses that protein as its injector point. Well, high insulin increases ACE2 because high insulin causes water retention. And so there are more ACE2s on all your cells, so you are more at risk of being infected when your insulin's high. And your insulin's high because of processed food. That's one. Number 2, diabetes, high blood glucose. High blood glucose, turns out the glucose actually crystallizes around the edges of those ACE2s, holding them open, making it even easier for the virus to inject its RNA. Number 3, short-chain fatty acids. So short-chain fatty acids come from fiber consumption. And of course, ultra-processed food is devoid of fiber. Short-chain fatty acids suppress the cytokine response. And we now know it's not the virus that kills you. It's your cytokine response that kills you, because your cytokine response is basically sort of like a nuclear blast that affects even your normal cells, but it's trying to get rid of the foreign invader. But you have to temper it. You have to be able to manage it. You have to be able to pull it back. You have to be able to minimize it. Short-chain fatty acids that come from the digestion of fiber in the gut are one of the things that improves that cytokine response. And that's why fiber is anti-inflammatory and also improves insulin sensitivity. But processed food doesn't have any fiber. It's been, that's been removed for shelf life. So those 3 demographics, people of color, the obese, pre-existing conditions, big ultra-processed food consumers, high sugar, low fiber, processed food, not real food. The CDC and the NIH and the MRC and everyone and Public Health England, no one is talking about food in COVID.
Yeah.
This is the 4th leg of the stool. Okay, we all talked about masking and hand washing and social distancing. Garbage. Fix the food.
If you enjoyed that short clip, I think you are really going to enjoy the full conversation, which you can check out here.